the most common mistakes that people make when writing queries. Now I hear you thinking like, I'm not going to make any mistakes. But trust me, even the most seasoned database engineer will make some of these commonly made mistakes because they're common. And even when you write more complicated queries, you may fall into one of these pitfalls somewhere along the way. Because most people that write SQL don't only write SQL. They may write some other programming language, and they may mix up some things here or there. It's not very often that a developer or a database engineer will solely use SQL. You may be using another programming language to supplement what you are doing. So let's get into some of the common mistakes. Well, the number one thing is misspelling commands. Now I hear you saying misspelling commands. What do you mean? Well, you can run into this, where instead of select, you write sleeked. Now, we know what's supposed to be here, but the computer doesn't. And it's going to throw a big fat error in your face if something like this happens. And then you may not have noticed this, but I even mistyped from. So form. And then I mistyped the users table. So all of these things can throw some kind of error in your face. Can't find the table. Don't know what sleeked is. What is form? And that may lead you to confusing scenarios. Now, the error will guide you in the right direction, but try to avoid these as much as possible. Now, a second common mistake is using the semicolon instead of the comma, or vice versa. I hear you saying, why would I misuse those? It's pretty self-explanatory. Well, it is. Depending on what you're used to, it may not be so common, and you may make those mistakes. So, select first name. Huh? Oh, yeah. This is supposed to be a comma, right, guys? Because it's first name, comma, last name. We're trying to say first name and the last name, not semicolon. That seems wrong. And then, we're ending the line with a comma? Well, that's not great because the semicolon tells us when the line ends. So try to avoid this pitfall as well. And then you may run into this scenario where you accidentally double commaed. And then SQL is going to be like, well, what did you want over here? I don't know what you want over here. And in that scenario, it's best that you either put an extra column between here or just remove the comma. This looks much better. Select first name, comma, last name from users. This is how it's supposed to look, guys. Doesn't it look pretty? Oof, we just hit a doozy here. Using double quotes instead of a single quote. Now, what do I mean by this? This issue, this common mistake, it has multiple layers to it. It's not as straightforward as it sounds. But like I've said in the previous videos, single quotes are the way that you write text in SQL. Do not use the double quotes. And for all of you out there who are already used to programming, this one may be a bit confusing to you because depending on the programming language you're using, you may be used to the double quotes. You may be used to using them to write text. And it may not come as easily for you to switch over to the single quotes. But don't worry, as you write more and more queries, it'll become more and more common. And for those of you who have no basis at all, well, don't worry too much about this one because you're starting off on the right foot. You're always going to use single quote. But what are these double quotes for? Well, what if I told you that double quotes are for tables? Single quotes are for text. Now you may be looking at me, what is he talking about? We didn't talk about that. Well, what if I told you that SQL is case insensitive? Basically, when you create tables in SQL, you decide how you want to name them. So you may name them users with an uppercase U. You may name them users, all uppercase. Heck, you may even call it users with an uppercase R if you want to be out there. But depending on how you type it, SQL might not be able to interpret it. Let's go back to the previous query. Over here, you can see that we have users as lowercase, no quotes at all. But it seems to be working, right? Well, what if you were in a database where someone decided to call their table users with an uppercase U. Well, then it becomes tricky because if you typed users in all lowercase, you may not get your results back, and that may become extremely tricky. So when you use double quotes, it is to tell SQL, hey, what I'm trying to select from here, the table I'm trying to select from, is called users with uppercase U, or some other kind of spelling notation. And you can even use this for column names. Column names? Are you serious, Mo? Well, yeah. You can even wrap the column names between double quotes. So what do we see here? We see a clear differentiation between what we consider text, which is using single quotes, and what SQL is interpreting from the data, which can use double quotes. So if we had a different type of spelling here in our table name, or we just wanted to wrap the naming convention of our column, we can use double quotes. For all intents and purposes, it is a best practice, depending on the type of database you're in, to use double quotes. It could be up to the team even to say like, hey, wrap all your columns and all your table names with the double quotes and make sure you reference them properly. Some teams may not enforce that. It really is a team norm at that point. Me personally, depending on the type of database you're in, if you're managing it personally, you can decide for it or against it. It won't really hurt you in the long run as long as you are consistent in your naming conventions of your columns and your tables. So, case-sensitive tables. What did I mean by that? Well, like I said, the double quotes can tell you what type of table you are selecting from. If your table's all lowercase, you can just do this. If your table's uppercase U, you need the double quotes. And if you decided, well, I'm going to do it all uppercase, or I want to put a space in between, you definitely need the double quotes. So just always make sure that you keep your naming conventions consistent so that you can decide if you need double quotes or if you don't need double quotes. The last common select mistake that you will see made most often: invalid column names. It's just that easy to do. It's just that easy to mistype a column name. And that's where software often helps you. If you use Valentina Studio, it helps you autofill column names depending on if it knows where you're trying to select from. But if you're a keyboard junkie and you're just trying to write in your notepad your select statements, you may hit a scenario like this, where you select first name, not first name, first name from users. And what you'll hit is a big fat SQL error. So always try to cover your basics. As long as you cover your basics, you are going to write amazing queries and you're just going to have a great time, because when that result hits your screen and you're not constantly hitting error cases because of these small issues, productivity is just going to skyrocket. And so now that we have all of that out of the way, let's dive into some filtering. Let's supercharge our skills here.